flying that we were doing was a huge service to the missionaries there. There was a general rule of thumb, not completely accurate, but a rule of thumb, that what you could walk in 8 hours in New Guinea, you could fly in 8 minutes. So that's a huge saving in time, energy, and so we helped prolong the energy, the lifespan, and the health and so forth of the missionaries. We also did a great service there for the people in general. We didn't fly just for the missionaries, we carried local people also. And we did a lot of medical emergency flights. In fact, my personal record was 3 in one day. But I would say on an average, we did 3 a week as an air service. We got a call from a nurse out in Marienburg in the Sepik River. She had a patient, I don't recall the details now, but she felt it best that person not be moved. She thought best, instead of bringing them from Marienburg to Wewak, that she keep the patient there, but she needed a special medicine urgently. So they gave me the flight. We had no cargo from Marienburg because our mission boat had just gone from Wewak to bring supplies along the Sepik River. So I flew out there empty. It was just that little box. I had no idea what was in it, except that it was urgently needed. When I got to Marienburg, I found because of the wind, I couldn't land the way we normally do. The strip there, as you landed, you went uphill, and then there was a bend in the strip. There was a dog leg off to the left. The wind was so strong that was impossible, and nobody I ever heard of it landed the other way. But I figured I could make it. It would work. So I landed the other way, but I had to touch down right on the knee of that dog leg, and then make sure I stopped by the time I got down the end of the hill, which worked out. But that trip saved the life of that person. The day that I did those 3 flights, the first one, we were prepared already to take off for a clinic. I had a nurse from the hospital with her 2 aides and their equipment to do a full day maternal child health clinic out in the bush station, a place called Turbo. We got a call on the radio that there was a woman in urgent need to come into Wewak, and they wanted a nurse to come along. So this nurse, Wendy Wright, she was a marvelous person, a very dedicated nurse. She said, look, I'll go save the time of getting somebody to come from the hospital and so on. So we took her things out of the plane. She and I went to Dagua on a 15-minute flight. We brought the woman in. She had complications, serious complications after childbirth. And when we arrived at Wewak, there was an ambulance and a nurse there to pick her up and take her to the hospital. That woman most probably owed her life to that flight, that right away like that. So those are very gratifying things. The second flight I had that day, that was that flight that we postponed. When I flew out to Turbo, I was getting the plane ready to take off to come back to Wewak. And at the end of the airstrip, there's a hill that goes up to the mission station. And Wendy came up to the top of the hill and she called out to me. She says, wait, don't take off. So I waited, so I'd find out. She says, I've got a patient that needs to come in. So as a young woman, I would say she was a late teenager, probably 19, 20, somewhere in there. She said she was close to giving birth to a child, but there were complications. And she said she should go into Wewak. So I said, okay. So we put her on the plane. The older woman came along to look after her while she was in the hospital. And anyway, that's an 8-minute flight from Turbo to Wewak. So we took off, and it's all radio controlled. It's all controlled airspace in New Guinea, so you can't move without calling in and so on. So I called in my departure from Turbo, heading for Wirrawee, and expecting to be there in 8 minutes. Shortly after that, the woman was sitting behind me. The nurse said, don't have her sit on the seat, so we folded the seat up. She sat on the floor behind my seat. I could feel some motion behind me. I picked up the microphone, I called the tower at Wewak, and I said, look, I'm landing at Wewak, not Wirrawee, which is closer. And it's also closer to the hospital. So anyway, I landed at Wewak, and pulled into the parking bay, and I had no idea what had happened because I couldn't see what was going on. I couldn't roll my seat back to get out because the woman was sitting behind me. So I had a bit of difficulty getting out. I tried to see what was going on, so I got to the rear and went back along the side of the plane where the cargo door is for the luggage. I opened it up, there's a newborn baby laying on the floor. Our planes had a lot of holes in them, small holes in the floor. And we did things like we carried cement, we carried rice, we carried flour, all sorts of things. So to keep that from falling in there and having to clean it out, we had a canvas that we put in that came up the side of the cabin about maybe 8-10 inches. And they get rather dirty rather quickly. There's this newborn baby laying on that dirty canvas. Anyway, finally the ambulance got there, and the nurse from the hospital, a local young woman, she was very efficient, she cut the cord and everything else and checked the woman out and finally wrapped the baby in a beautiful, immaculate white blanket, and off they went. When I went back to Turbo to pick up Wendy and her crew, she came up and she had a very shy smile on her face, and she said, "Did you have any trouble on the way?" I said, "Well, no trouble, but I did end up with an extra passenger." And she says, "The people did not tell me the whole story." She says, "If they had told me the whole story," she says, "I would have gone with you." I remember one nurse wrote back. She said, "Oh, she wished she were back in Wewak again." She said she's back in health services in Australia. She says, "People come in complaining, moaning, everything else." He says, "The people in the Guinea would come in, you'd hardly hear them whimper." Now this is a story about pain, the endurance of pain, how people put up with pain. One Sunday on Kairu Island, a woman fell out of a tree. Now what she was doing in the tree, I have no idea, but she fell out of a tree and broke her right arm. It was a compound fracture, the bone was sticking out through the flesh. It was just at 11:30, and by the time they called, the person who was operating the radio that day at the Wewak had shut the radio off and was gone. Somebody in the Idapi Diocese, up in the coastal mountains of the Idapi Diocese, had his radio on and heard the call. He tried calling Wewak, got no response. A priest down in the Kiunga Daru Diocese, on the other side of the island, way beyond the coastal mountains, he also heard the call. He tried calling Wewak, didn't get through. He says, "I can call Madang." So they had the frequency for reporting airstrips. So he called Madang. Now, on Sunday, nobody operates, there's not an operator to pick up those airstrip reports, but the radio is on, and just on the floor above is the control tower floor. The fellow on the control tower heard the call. He went downstairs, answered the call. They told him about this woman. He went back up. There was a DC-3 Trans-Australia Airlines, which was flying from Madang to Hollandia via Wewak. So he called the captain on that plane, told him what the problem was. When the captain landed at Wewak, he went into the terminal and called the mission. The phone at the mission rang. One of the priests there answered the phone, and then he came and woke me up to tell me about this emergency. So this call went all over the countryside. I had to figure out one time how many miles around there. But anyway, so I went out to the hangar, pushed the plane out of the hangar, flew over there. By this time it was probably, the original call was around 11:30. By this time it was probably 1:30. When I landed there was nobody to be seen, nobody around anywhere. So finally, as I was looking around, one of the brothers came out of the house, and he said, I said, "Was there an emergency? I thought there was somebody here that needed to be brought in." He said, "Yeah." He says, "But they got tired waiting, they went back to the village." So he said, "Oh, there they are." So he looked down, halfway down the strip. Well, at that time it was the end of the strip. There was a man and a woman walking, and two little kids alongside of them. The woman walking with this bone sticking out of her arm, carrying a baby in her left arm. And not a whimper out of her, not a complaint, not to say, why didn't you hurry up or something like this. She's just grateful that I got there. So I helped them into the plane. Well, the father and the two little kids sat in the back. I held the baby. She insisted on holding the baby. So I held the baby I think brother held the baby. Well, I helped her to get in without doing too much damage to that arm. They fastened her with the seat belt, and she took the baby. I got in the plane, flew over to Wewak, 8 minutes. When I got there, I had called for the ambulance before I left even, but it hadn't arrived. Of course, this being Sunday, there was problems, I guess. So we had to wait there, and I told her, look, I saw I've got a chair from the office that you can sit on. Oh, no, she did. She sat on the tire of the plane, holding with a broken arm, holding the baby there. Not a moan out of her, not a complaint. And when the ambulance came, she says, thank you, off they went. It's really amazing. I found they were marvelous people. I had a lot of friends there. They were, very loyal. They were very friendly. You could have a lot of fun with them. They were always willing to help.